And what's been a historic year for the SEC, 14 teams dancing, that's a record. Half of the Sweet 16 coming from the SEC. Wow. And now half of the Final Four. Great odds to potentially crown a champion. What a year it's been for this league.
Yeah, and they had a chance to get 4 teams into the Final Four, which is crazy to think about. They had them in all regions. Every time we talk about what the SEC has done in basketball, I like to go back to the very beginning because I remember when this happened. It was 2016. The SEC only sent 3 teams to the NCAA tournament. Greg Sankey, new on the job, brings in Mike Tranghese, who's Dave Gabbitt's right-hand man in the Big East. And he says, like, help. Like, we need to revamp men's basketball in this sport. So it was scheduling games against better competition. It was limiting, like there was rules around non-conference scheduling. Everyone's opponent must have an RPI average of 175 or better, which just means like you're not playing the worst of the worst in Division I just to boost your record and get some wins. So you had that element. They added, more weekly coverage on the SEC network to continue to boost and give exposure to their teams. Later games on television, stop complaining about them. Like these are showcase opportunities. Use football to help highlight basketball. Like there were so many pieces to this, which then led to, you had great coaches hired. You had more investment in the programs, retaining those great coaches. It was just like all of these pieces that came into place that lead you to this point where the league's as deep as it is. But the question is, all of this has been great. Fantastic regular season, arguments about the best league in college basketball, record-setting numbers of teams in, record-setting amount of money coming in for NCAA tournaments, units, which are like they're advancing in the tournament. But the question is, Jordan, do they need to win the title to validate all of that? Like, is there something that's missing if they don't after checking all of these other boxes?
I got to be honest. I think in terms of pressure, the most pressure is on these two teams in terms of representing your league, right? Like when you talk about the ACC, it's always Duke, it's always Carolina. So they're used to that. I don't think this is a driving force for these teams. They're not sitting in a locker room saying, we got to do this for our conference. But in terms of conference narratives, commissioners and people on the TV side representing these conferences, this is certainly a conversation. Look, Houston is in the Big 12. They've inserted themselves. They classed up and they've been the class of the conference the last 2 years. There's still a new bird there, but so much conversation about the Big Ten and the 25-year drought, which now will become a 26-year drought with no Big Ten team in this thing. Look, it's not 25 years, but it's 11 years. That's pretty long for a prideful SEC. And you go back to that team, and it was Kentucky. And Kentucky, for a lot of SEC basketball, a lion's share of that history has come from that blue blood program. So for an opportunity for Bruce Pearl, who's now going to the Final Four for his second time, Todd Golden, first time for him. He's a rising star who's arrived representing Florida, and we know about their back-to-back championships. That was over 2 decades. That was 2006, 7. I mean, we're talking, 17, 18 years ago. So, yeah, absolutely. This needs to be capped with all this history they've achieved with the championship. Are the players in the locker room thinking about that? No. Are the coaches thinking about that? No. But as we talk about conference pride, let's not forget this incredible year. It's kind of going to be like just a distant memory if you don't say, oh, yeah, the champion came from that SEC. And, oh, by the way, what a year from start to finish that conference had, Nicole.
Yeah, I tend to agree as well because – it's part of what the Big East has hung its hat on, right? Is like, okay, college sports are changing and we don't have football, but we are excellent at basketball. We've won all these titles, Villanova, UConn, like we've got all these teams that can win trophies, but also money. You're winning units for your league. And then the Big 12 has had this argument for years now about how strong the conference is relative to others. It's very hard to compare these leagues, especially once you get into league play. You don't have a ton of data points. So this stuff matters when you are thinking about the perceptions, how you're marketing your leagues, how this stuff works. And if we want to say the SEC is great at basketball now, which it is, you kind of want the trophy as well. You want them to be cutting down the nets, especially when you have 2 number 1 seeds and they get to the Final Four. And again, like you said, Auburn and Bruce Pearl has been one of the best coaches in college basketball for a long time. And then Todd Golden, as you said, rising star who has arrived and can win at this level. So I don't think there's added expectation or pressure because, of course, they want to win at this stage. And they're going to have challenging games to get there, including against each other. But I do think for the outside perception and some of the off-season conversation coming out of this season, it does matter.
Yeah, and look, it's a conference that's positioned nicely. We know about the athletic departments. We know about the collectives that are flush with money, that are very interested in helping their programs out to prop them up. That's no different than the Big Ten. And so the Big Ten, we should expect them year after year to be there. Obviously, it was what's been a good year for Big Ten basketball, but did not end up in a Final Four. But they'll be there continually. Can they get over the hump is a question. Something worth watching out for, and it's not necessarily an SEC conversation, but it's a conference conversation, is the Big East. You know, this $20 million this cap in which these athletic departments can operate with, there's no football in the Big East. So having that number and how they're able to distribute that to basketball should position the Big East very nicely moving forward in this new world. So I expect the Big East to have a bigger seat at the table. We know about the tradition there. You mentioned Mike Tranghese. We know what his impact was in that Big East. I think that's one to really monitor, and I do expect the Big Ten to keep on going. Something to think about there, too, is Tom Izzo and his future. We have that conversation every year as he continues to surge on. Did an incredible job, maybe his best one yet. How much more does he have left in the tank?
Yeah, lots more to talk about, Jordan. I think we should do that after we dissect these, hopefully 3 great games in San Antonio.
I'm not going to let you leave without picking a champion. I think I know where you're going, given our conversation here. Who do you like to cut down the nets in San Antonio, Nicole?
So I think we might agree because I'm thinking it's going to be a Duke-Florida national championship matchup, and the Blue Devils are cutting down the nets. I've been beyond impressed by what Jon Scheyer has done in year 3, following a legend. There were so many people for years. Everyone wondered who was going to follow Coach K at Duke. And then the second part of that conversation was, I want to be the guy after the guy after the guy, right? Like, you don't want to be the first to do it. And he has just done such a masterful job recruiting at such a high level, coaching at such a high level, pressing all the right buttons in game. Just remarkable. So yes, I do think it'll be Jon Scheyer cutting down the nets as a head coach this time.
You know, one of the conversations, I'll leave it with this, and talking with Coach Scheyer, I said to him leading up to that Elite Eight matchup, I said to him, you know, how do you do the balancing act when you follow a legend like Coach K, who you still have a relationship with, who still has a firm grip of his fastball, but doesn't loom and linger over the program, allows you to be you? When do you go back and forth on, hey, my inexperience is in this spot, maybe it's a blind spot. Do I go to coach with this, or do I not go to coach because it's my program now? And he goes, it's really simple. Coach K is always there for me if I need him, but I also know I need to figure some of this out on my own. And I think it's safe to say, Nicole, at this point, Coach Jon Scheyer's got it figured out. This guy has got some really big things in front of him. I agree with you. I do see it being Duke and Florida. These two teams, especially down the stretch, have been the 2 best teams to me with the most talent. But Duke is just – I don't know if it's because I just watched them in Newark. I just don't see anybody beating this team. They're not the team I picked in my bracket. But in my readjusted bracket, give me the Duke Blue Devils to win the championship here. Their 6th national title. I'd be surprised if they don't cut down the nets, Nicole.
I agree. I did have them. I did have the faith in them. We're not going to talk about the rest of the bracket, but I had the champion correct.
Well, that's a perfect place to end it. We started by singing the praises of Nicole, nailing this on how it'd be chalky. Perfect place to end it. She said Duke would be the champion. Will they prove her to be right? For Nicole, I'm Jordan. Thanks for listening, everybody, and enjoy Final Four weekend and the eventual crowning of a champion.